Hello, welcome to Museum Moments. My name is Ellie. I'm the Education Director at Jewish Museum Milwaukee, and I am joined today across the thin wall from me by my colleague Molly Dubin. So it's a funny thing, we're in the same building, we're under one roof, and we're on two screens.
That's exactly correct. Well,
Welcome.
it's lovely to be here with you, Ellie.
We've done hundreds of museum moments. Molly and I are the people you've probably seen the most doing them, and this is the very first time we've ever been doing one together.
True story.
So as we start today's museum moment, this is one of our previews of an upcoming exhibit, and it's an exhibit that Molly has been working her fingers to the bone to get open this Friday. So I'm really excited to talk Scrapyard. So Molly, can you take us through the process of why we would want to bring an exhibit in about scrap and what's exciting about this exhibit?
Yeah, definitely. So scrap is something that we, I think, as a staff and even, lay leaders in our community, it's a topic that's come up a lot over the years because we have such a rich scrap history in Wisconsin, and particularly in the Jewish community. So when our friends at the Jewish Museum of Maryland a number of years ago let us know that they were writing a grant and going to be developing this really large exhibit, we were thrilled and thought, what a terrific opportunity once that's completed to be able to bring it here, which is exactly what we're doing, and also to augment with our own original piece. So not only are we, getting this kind of big overview of national, international, but also an opportunity to really tell some great stories and look back at some businesses that have had, a big impact on the landscape of Wisconsin and definitely on the Jewish community.
So I want to get into the look of this exhibit. So here we're going to pull up our images and I'm going to share my screen. So Molly, can you take us through what we're seeing here and what people can expect when they're visiting this exhibit?
Yeah. So once you come into the space, you'll see there is a great deal to this exhibit. There are actually over 300 objects and media pieces and interactive displays. So it really goes from starting with, there's our lovely title wall, and now we're kind of getting into the beginning of the narrative, which really goes back to immigration and to peddling, which is a story we're very familiar with here at the Jewish Museum Milwaukee, and somewhat of a ubiquitous narrative for Jewish communities across the country. This idea of coming to a new country, not having a lot of money, certainly not having a lot of opportunities, both in terms of socioeconomic opportunity and also because of anti-Semitic situations. So what started out as like the peddling, collecting scrap, collecting rags, the old rag and junk men, that's where this all starts. And we go through the whole evolution in this national scope, along with case studies and really taking us through modern innovations and through to contemporary sustainability, green movements, reuse, recycle, repurpose, and looking at our own footprint. Yeah.
Sorry, Molly.
Yeah.
One of the things that it gets to is also, just as you're talking about, just the diversity of objects and things. First of all, the fact that there's 300 artifacts and objects and things in this exhibit is bananas. This, I think, is the largest exhibit that we've ever brought in.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with that now that it
has
up.
so many narrative pieces, but I think when we hear that word scrap, we tend to really think metal, that this is really, everything from paper to rags to bone, which I think is fascinating, rubber, and really exploring kind of the breadth of what can be recycled. So one of the things that I think was really intriguing to us about this exhibit was their interactives.
Yeah.
I'm going to give a little bit of a kind of message about, as we look at two of the kind of bigger pieces.
Yeah. So this was really exciting because it's a really family friendly exhibit, and there's a lot of great history, but also looking at, science and technology. So what you're looking at here are a couple of really great interactives. One is, what is your value in scrap? So basically you stand on there and it equates what you would be worth if you were sold as a scrap commodity.
And I
And
think it's copper, aluminum, and paper. Are those the three?
Yes, exactly.
You can see the variation. In copper, we're worth a lot more money.
That's very true. That's very true. The commodities have very different values. And as we aptly learned during the process of researching this exhibit, that really scrap yards and the whole scrap industry are somewhat of a bellwether for, you know, the economic situation in our society and where things are going. So that was really interesting to learn and makes a lot of sense. So what you're seeing on the other side there, we have an entire motorbike that has the full piece, but then it breaks it down into all the different parts to show you what it's comprised of and what can be recycled and what it might be repurposed as. And along with those two things, we have another interactive that looks at what strength might be required to make a bale of plastic water bottles. We have one of the other interesting things we really look at in this is the perception, both in terms of, you know, where these people started out and being looked down upon, kind of being kind of the ills of society, the depictions within pop culture, which is really interesting. So we have some music you can listen to. It certainly was a topic that infiltrated Yiddish theater and film and eventually television. So that's a little bit of what's going on here. And
I just want to, as we're, you know, scrap had this kind of early, we talked to so many people in the scrap industry, and so many of them talked about the fact that they were junk peddlers.
Yep.
And that idea of junk peddling to kind of legitimate recycling, and those, when you're talking about stereotypes and perceptions, that certainly comes up. One of the things that really shifts the perception is World War II.
Definitely.
Here we're looking at the panels related to World War II, including this great interactive, which highlights many of the posters that were used to get people involved in the fight.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting to kind of watch that, how it was really, you know, so looked down upon and kind of this negative perception. And then, you know, heading into World War II, it was something that was so necessary, and all of a sudden all of these scrappers were looked at as heroes in being able to contribute to the war effort and to, you know, America's involvement in the war. So it was a huge shift in looking at this industry and the people involved.
And actually, if you look at the very top of this panel, you guys probably can't read it on your phones and whatnot, but one of the quotes there that they're pointing to is from scrapper Max Chudnow in 1942, saying, pointing to the bed, the lady said, "That ought to make a lot of bullets." Chuckling, Max replied, "Yes, and we got to make millions. Bullets, not dollars. Ha ha." So even in the national exhibit, there's some moments in which Milwaukeeans appear. And that's actually a pretty great segue to our Milwaukee exhibit. Now, you guys are looking at the least beautiful visual in the history of visuals. This is a list that we condensed. It is a crazy list. This list contains 372 names of scrap businesses or scrappers from the year 1900 to 1960. And when we started compiling this list, there were over 2,000 listings in city directories of scrappers, Jewish scrappers in that time period, which we then condensed based on years and addresses. And we have to thank our volunteers, Lynn Redding and Emma Gasinski-Rose, who helped us break this down to try and have some sort of metric to just show how big the industry was in Milwaukee. Molly, can you talk about this? This research was both super fun and an incredible challenge. Which side do you want to come down on?
Well, it was great, you know, and it is interesting, you know, to note, as you did, that in the national exhibit, you know, some Milwaukee businesses and individuals come up, and that's because I think while this is an industry that was across the board, you know, and the country, Milwaukee and Wisconsin really had a huge impact, and in terms of the kind of the national stage had a real presence. So thinking about the fact that we know, at least for half of the 20th century, 70 to 90% of the scrap industry was Jewishly run and or owned. And that, that statistic and that grandiosity is very much reflected in what we researched and what we collected. There are just so many stories, and they're intertwined, which is just fascinating. We love to talk about, the 2 degrees of separation in the Jewish community of Milwaukee.
Might be too many degrees. I think it's like 1. I think they're the family businesses. They're family businesses, and then they're family businesses with, Here we have Zeke Ephraim, who was one of the Ephraim brothers who ran a company, and his wife was a miller. And you're like, oh. And then, so they were competing directly against Miller Compressing. And so you have nephews and cousins who are working on both sides of the same industry. Not even like, they're in ferrous and we're non-ferrous, but, but actually with them, they were competing directly.
And the other thing we learned is that scrappers have very long memories.
Yeah. Great memories for scrappers.
We had a lot of great conversations with so many, people throughout the community that shared their stories, their experiences, and they do have very long memories. And that was wonderful for us because it enabled us to, really share this kind of micro narrative, in the parallels to the national and international narrative. And as we said earlier, Milwaukee and Wisconsin is just a scrap industry wonderland. So, and to that point, we have a little map that, it's a pretty big map.
Well, and before I get, switch, this is I think one of the earliest pictures we have of scrap. This is a picture of Cohen Iron and Metal. And it's just such a great old picture with the horses and the,
and just to, think about once we get to like the huge, grappling cranes and all of that, that original kind of wooden makeshift crane with the magnet, when you think about, what that evolved to, it's kind of extraordinary.
So one of the things we wanted to endeavor to do in this exhibit is try to give some credence to scrap across the state. And literally this map could have probably had 50 or 60 more dots on it. And we just don't have the time, space, any of that. So we tried to give kind of a representative sample of some of the scrap businesses statewide. I think we went as far north as Marinette, as far west as Eau Claire, and down right by the border with Burlington. And so you really cover the whole state. One of my favorite stories that comes out of this is, you find the Schenken brothers in Sheboygan who open up right after World War II, and they have, as they list themselves in their advertisement, they're all wearing their uniforms. 2 of the 3 brothers were veterans, so that was like the pitch. We have Dennis Wasteman's father's junk license from 1920. You needed, and these junk licenses were the licenses that you needed until I think about the 1980s or so. You had to have a junk dealer license. And we have some really great local artifacts going in. Thanks to Jeff Schuster for giving us bales of copper and aluminum. And we have a loading, it's a baler, right? Like an
antique baler. Yeah. Cardboard and paper press. Antique baler.
Definitely get your fingers caught in there. Some really funny postcards and pins from Chudnow Iron and Metal.
Yes. We know where Dick got his sense of humor in getting into comedy sports, developing comedy sports.
100%.
Started with scrap and herb.
It's all going to be open. We hope we've whet your appetite for this exhibit and what you're going to see. We have to thank the tremendous number of people who came together to make this exhibit possible. You can see our donors there, including our lead donor, Alter Trading Corporation. We really appreciate all of their support. We also have to thank our supporter, Robin Cohen, for her support of Museum Moments. And there are a couple of big announcements. This is a museum moment about something that you can actually come and do in person. This exhibit opens on Friday, but Thursday night we have our special our opening. You can still register. It's all virtual. We're going to be hearing from the curator of the exhibit, a guy named Zachary Levine. And we're also going to have a special performance from Fox and Branch. They're amazing on the washboard and guitar. It's the first time ever you'll hear the washboard accompanied by the guitar. And Molly and I will be doing a more formal tour.
Yes, yes. And the other thing we should mention, because inevitably, because this was such a vast industry and impacted so many people, I'm sure that there are people out there that are going to see this and go, oh, you know, my family was involved, or, you know, I have a great story to share, or an image to share. And we do have a scrapbook that we can certainly add things to. So if you're not in the scrapbook yet, you can be.
So feel free to reach out to us at either through Facebook, through our email, and let us know if there's something you need to contribute that you're like, how did we miss this? Thank you so much, Molly, for taking time out of your crazy schedule right now. Thanks to everybody.
Thank you, Ellie.
We really are looking forward to seeing you in the next couple of months. Make sure you check out jewishmuseummilwaukee.org for all of our upcoming programs, including that opening, which I mentioned. And join us again for another museum moment. We're back after our little holiday sabbatical. And next week, we're going to be talking about the Peshtigo fire with the lead volunteer from the Peshtigo Fire Museum. Lots of interest and intrigue there.
Definitely.
Thanks so much and have a wonderful day.